Welcome, folks, to another episode of Who's Ghost Stories. We are still in the midst of our back to school run. Today, we're taking a look at Grove City College, not the mall, the actual learning part of Grove City. I am your host, Reiki Master and Medium, Andrew Huzar. We've got research expert, Sean, and then paranormal enthusiast slash cryptid expert slash the LeBron James of education, Professor Alex Wheaton.
Plus.
Um, as always, check out our sponsor with the links in the bio. We've got Spirit Magica, where you can get all your crystals. Use coupon code WHO'SARE11 to save yourself 11% off, and then you can get yourself some really, really good goodies there. We've bought a few things from them in the past. Definitely like all their stuff. Thank you to everyone who has ordered. Keep ordering. With the holidays coming up in about 6 months, it's a good time to get those orders in now. If you know somebody that you're thinking of you wanting to buy some crystals for, I would get that in ASAP. And then Pet Creation. Yeah. Pet Art Creations is our other sponsor. They will do beautiful artwork of any pets or people that you want them to.
The image will appear here.
So definitely check them out with our link below too. As I've said before, if it's your first time, you can give them your email and you'll get a 20% off coupon. I believe the coupon code is welcome20, as long as they don't change it.
Is the Who's Our 11, is the 11 because of 11%?
Yep.
Hot dang. Sorry, that was a weird thing. My brain was like, is that why?
Yeah. They'll let me change it, but I don't want to.
No, I get it.
I like it because it's 11%
it's
off.
Perfect.
I'm like, no, I can stay that.
Oh, man, you should have gone with 13% off.
They did not let me, but if they ever upgraded, I will change the number to whatever the percentage off is.
Sorry,
It'll get you the most bang for your buck.
Or the most bucks for your bag.
That too.
On that note, Grove City College.
Take us in.
Grove City College was established in 1876 as Pine Grove Normal Academy in Grove City, Pennsylvania. It would become Grove City College in 1884. The college was formerly associated with the Presbyterian Church, but is currently not affiliated. The college offers 60 major degree programs, and the college has many buildings and dormitories, but we will be focusing on a select few. The Pew Fine Arts Center and the Lily Room of the Mary Anderson Pew Hall.
The Pew Fine Arts Center was built in 1976 and served as an auditorium, band room, and art gallery. The PFAC replaced the former art building Crawford Hall, which was built in 1931. In the 70s, a female student, Gwendolyn, is said to have fallen from the catwalk in the old auditorium. After her death, it is said that she wanted the catwalk and primarily the costume room. When things were moved to the PFAC, the spirit traveled with the costumes. This is the current home of Gwendolyn, where she is said to frequent the catwalk in the costume room. The building is said to have a heavy feeling, and there is a sense of being watched when you are completely alone. Another potential backstory of the spirit is rumored to have been caused by a seance in the Crawford Hall where students spoke to the spirit of a former female janitor. The students asked the spirit to show itself, but it did not appear. The building was said to be haunted shortly after the seance, with the spirit moving to PFAC with the costumes, just as in the story of the female student.
The Mary Anderson Pew Hall was built in 1937 as a woman's dormitory. The building had additions added to it in 1947 and 1950. The building would be used as a dorm until 1961. There is a room in this dorm known as the Lily Room. The room gets its name from the fragrance of lilies that comes from it. Much like Gwendolyn, there are two separate legends surrounding this room. The first tells of a girl that hung herself in the closet in the Lily Room, and the smell was that of her perfume. After her death, the room was locked for 15 years. When the room was reopened, the lily smell still lingered. There have been sightings of a young girl and crying coming from her locked room. The second story tells of the young girl in the story being possessed by a demon spirit. This spirit caused the girl to take her own life in the Lily Room. A failed exorcism was attempted on the room, causing them to seal off the room. The young girl is still said to wander the halls, but in this version, strange noises are heard from the room, along with scratching, as if something were trying to escape.
Grove City College has tragic stories associated with their hauntings. Whenever a tragic event takes place, the energy from that moment leaves a mark on the environment. If these legends are to be believed, it makes sense that these buildings would have the activity that they do. Or are these spirits in a loop from the college's 150 plus years, echoes from the past? We may never know for certain, but what we do know is there is something else living at Grove City College.
So first question, do you know when it stopped being affiliated with the Presbyterians?
Sorry.
I believe, I want to say that it was in the 1900s. I can't remember when, though.
Because I find it really interesting that both of the main legends, it's not a good word to say, but they have a normal legend and then an incredibly religious or spiritual one.
Yeah.
Involving a seance and a demonic possession.
So this school is extremely secular and very strict. There's no alcohol allowed at all on the campus. This school actually was part of Grove City versus Bell. So you do not actually you cannot use student loans to go here. You have to use either a personal loan or your own money to go there. The ratio of students is 1 male to 1 female. And basically a lot of it is very, very strict there. So as we're talking about how strict this environment is, and we have said before, why wouldn't bored students come up with ghost stories?
Yeah, you're talking about a totally normal academy, all right.
Totally normal.
Like I said, they actually have a program with PNC to help students get loans to go there. You can't go there if they're not an Article 9 school.
I would say, so, Sean, as you were reading the intro, you definitely missed it, but Andrew and I made a look at each other when you said Pine Grove Normal Academy. We both went,
that's not a tax evasion if I've ever heard one.
Normal sticks out.
So what normal is normal academies were schools where you would go to become a teacher.
Okay.
And what it is they were tradition. I had to look it up.
See, that's why you weren't surprised. You already got the surprise. We're like,
traditionally, normal schools essentially were finishing schools for high school students, and you would complete it just so you could become a teacher.
Yeah.
It wasn't a 4-year degree or anything. It was, nope, we're going to teach you how to be a teacher, and then you're going to go be a teacher.
Sounds about right.
We're going to make you normal.
So, excuse me. What I think is interesting, knowing that history of the building, or of the college, I guess, definitely has a history, and I wonder, knowing that it's very secular, knowing that it's very strict, how much is known? Because there is a history with very strict places and organizations dealing with things in-house.
Yep.
And the fact that, it is a school that you cannot use public funding and loans for, there is a lot to be said about that. So I wonder what else is there to this place. And definitely, as Andrew said, the fact that there's 2 versions of both stories is just weird.
Yeah.
Even for us,
they follow
weird.
the same steps.
But they're vastly different.
And we're
Both are
talking
great
stories.
ghost stories.
We're talking stories that are only about 50 years old.
Yeah, like they're not even that. Yeah, like they're. I want to know more.
Yeah.
Because there's something to it. Because why would, even if we assume like we have in the other episodes that it's teens being teens, regardless of teens being teens, why would both stories have two vastly different? When I see multiple versions of the same story with the same beats, the writer in me goes, there was a source material. There was something that it came from. So I want to say one of these tales is the original story and the other one is the more modern telling. And I wonder at this point, because as Andrew brought up, when did they stop being associated with the Presbyterian? Like, was the demonic one the original story, or like, there are questions that I don't know we'll get the answer to.
The other thing, and I debated whether or not to put this in there or not. This was one of, I believe it was 19 colleges that was actually basically conscripted during World War II to actually train them on, I've got to look it up now, but they had a specialized thing that they were actually teaching people specifically for the purposes of World War II. And that's what their school became for years during the war.
Clearly it was seances since that had been happening there.
Clearly, this is one of the few times where I think I can say the school is weirder than the stories. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. What do you think, Andrew? I'm just kind of...
It is just very weird, like you said, to see the exact same legend, but you've got an incredibly, like, religious, like, anti-spiritualist slant, and then you've got a perfectly, like, normal version. Like, she was a student, she was in the theater, she fell off the catwalk. The other one, she wasn't even a student, it was a seance that brought through a janitor, and now she's attached to costumes. The other one, girl was sad or depressed, hung herself. The other one, demon got
possessed
into her. Like,
yeah.
How, like, these are wildly different, but everything else the exact same.
The beats are the same, but the details are vastly different, and that's why it's like, and that's why I said typically as a writer, that's what you do. Is if you have multiple versions of the same story, it means there's a common source for the story.
So during World War II, they were one of 6 schools selected by the United States Navy to participate in the highly unusual electronics training program. And at one point, there were only 81 civilians in the school. The rest of the 300 of the student body were actually people at the Navy or Marines.
Cool shit, they're trying to open up the mist.
Basically.
Yeah.
No, like I said, both are great ghost stories, but that just separate tint on both of them is jarring. And looking at Gwendolyn, you were a theater kid, so you'd be able to attest to it more. I haven't been on too many catwalks.
Sorry.
They, a lot of, especially older ones, aren't the safest areas.
No, they rattle and shake, and especially if it's an older one, we're talking like old school iron metal, like just heavy. And so when you walk on it, you feel it vibrate a little bit. It's not that it's going to fall or anything, but the material it's made out of and how it's suspended, like
it's like a rope bridge.
Yeah, it's like a rope bridge, but with a heavy, not flexible material, and all of a sudden, like, you feel those vibrations under your feet. So it is not it's not the most safest thing. And the other thing is, typically catwalks don't have a rail.
Yeah.
They have maybe like one bar so that you can hold on to something, but it is not a rail in a traditional sense. It's not like up to your arm length. Like
it's down at like the waist. So if you topple,
you're going over. Yeah. So like, yeah, and there's it's a weird part of history, but there is history of people dying in the theater falling off of catwalks. That is a fairly normal occurrence. Yeah. So, like, the question, does it give legitimacy to the legend, or is it just another one of the numerous people that die falling off of a catwalk? Like, there is that kind of thing. But Sean said it way back when we talked about Ganon. Theater people are superstitious. That is 100%. We are superstitious people, so I'm not surprised that there's a legend related to the theater at all.
If anything, I'm more surprised of how much the story has the two alternate endings, because we're talking not only a very closed and close-knit college campus, but that's how it is every year throughout its entire existence. So we're talking very few people travel through here. So the fact that it deviates that much, it's like, okay, at what point did this deviate? Or at what point was it covered up?
which is why I go back to my earlier statement. I feel like one of these has to be the original story, and the other one is the
flair.
Yeah.
Or the cover-up.
Going off of what I said earlier, the fact that it's super... When I say conservative, I don't mean like politically conservative, but conservative, very...
The campus is.
Well, yes. I wasn't trying to go down that road, but a very strict, like, that group is... Everything's in-house. You handle it on your own. So, yeah, there's some things to be said about it.
No, and I could almost see them actually being connected if the seance was to try to contact the student Gwendolyn that fell off the catwalk. Instead, they got the janitor lady, or a different spirit entirely, and then that over time got
darker
morphed.
That said it was a janitor.
And then over time, that just got morphed into it too. That now there's also the second legend of, well, no, the one from the seance is the one haunting the costumes.
Well, as we also said too, it could be one of two things. Anyone knows that if you have a scent in a room and then you close off that room, that scent gets trapped in there.
Oh,
It doesn't matter when you open it up.
It lingers.
But, as we also said, a scent is one way that spirits make themselves known. Or potentially something darker making itself known.
I'm intrigued by the concept that they sealed the room off. How many years? 15 years?
15 years.
Why? Like, ignoring the stories, ignoring the legend, knowing that it's a very strict, tight-knit group, why would you close off a room for well over a decade?
Maybe that was why. Keep all prying eyes, prying people out of there. Black smudge on there, or something else happened to her.
Since we're all about connecting stories too, in 2008 they actually were donated an observatory from Edinburgh.
I don't know how I feel about that.
No, and that story fascinated me the most because of how different it got. And this, like, the Lily Room just sounds scary.
Yeah. So, I do want to point out, and this is the skepticism part of this, and this is the only skepticism I have about this. The sound of scratching, just knowing from my own personal experience, mice and rats in the walls of any building, like, if it's quiet enough, you can hear them scurrying and scratching away. Like, that is a very common thing. And while I haven't been to Grove City College, I've driven through Grove City. I've been to the actual location where this is. Like, it's not unbelievable to think there are mice and rats.
That's a lot of
in
its
the walls.
fields too.
Yeah. So it's like, I would definitely see the physical living realm skeptical side saying the scratching is just, you're listening for something and you hear the mice and the rats. Like, you're not hearing a demon scratching its way out, you're hearing the rodents in the walls. So that's my one piece of skepticism on this.
I think it's also just like Area 51. Just because it's a place where you can't go, where you can't get answers.
There's
if there's anything that is even remotely a story, that's what you run with as fact.
Yep.
So it's like, we don't know what is down there. They could lock up students in there. We don't know. We don't know.
Heck, it could just be where, because it's a dry campus, it could be where the administration hides all its liquor.
Could be.
Like, they go to that room in particular to drink because they make it a dry campus. Like, it could be anything.
Lily's the spray they use to cover up
the smell of the alcohol. Look at that. We came up with a real world Scooby-Doo-esque.
Obviously, they got to switch to Vlad because then it'll just smell like the cleaning supplies.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the religious spin of that story then? Since there's two for every legend that they got.
The religious spin of the Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Just picture this. Every night, the administration, they're not actually super religious. They're a cult. And they go to the Lily Room to worship the demon that was summoned to that room that led to Lily's death. And so, every weekend on Friday, when the moon is high in the sky, administration goes into that room, a candle can be seen from the window, and they convene with the devil and dance. There's my
see.
And if you ever saw a random light from a window, maybe not even that room, but in that building, you might think, oh, that's the room. You see one random light, you're like, oh, that's it. Oh my God, it's happening.
The whole campus seems like the movie Hereditary.
Kind of terrifying.
No, but both legends are incredibly fascinating. All versions of them are really good ghost stories. Both are terrifying, but I think like that interests me more almost than the legends itself in this place is how did we get
the divergence.
It is unique.
It is.
Like this isn't the first time we've dealt with different stories, but this is
they're usually like variations.
Yeah, this is the first time we've had
cowboy walks onto a roof.
Yeah.
Or cowboy just walks upstairs.
Yeah, like this is a major difference in stories. This is like if the story of Matt Anthony Wayne's bones didn't get scattered across the way. It was, an Indian tribe attacked his son, took his bones. Like, that's essentially what it is. Yeah. It's like taking what is established and going in a completely different direction. This is very different. We have not had something like this before. So this is interesting. I think that's why, for sure, like, Sean, with you being the research person, you've had time to look at this and read through this, but Andrew and I are, like, experiencing this, and we're like, that's why we're caught up on it, is because it's so different.
And at one point, when I was reading through, because there was a blog posting of someone that was sharing their experiences, and I saw the divergence of the stories, and I'm like, is this another story? I'm like, I was so confused because one article I was reading about their experiences only talked about Gwendolyn the student. The other only talked about not even Gwendolyn, just talked about her being a female janitor. But then all the beats were exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think there's two versions of the story. And then I get to the Lily Room, and there are definitely two distinct stories. And I'm like, what is going on here? I probably spent, I'm embarrassed to say how long I spent, trying to figure out the fact that these are the exact same story, just different versions. I was at a loss.
One's the director's cut.
Right?
That's what it feels like.
And it's like, if the seance and the demon one are the flares, it's like the original stories are so interesting in their own and scary on their own, you don't need the additional flare.
Yeah.
Or are these things that potentially the school added to the story because they wanted to cover something up?
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot harder to cover up someone falling off a catwalk or, you know, a student hanging herself. We're talking, I don't know what the census was at the school in the 70s, but earlier than that, we're talking a school that had about 150 men and 150 women. When you have 2 deaths in the same decade, when you only have about 300 students,
Everyone knows them.
you're going to want to find some way to hide that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to believe, oh, that's nonsense, if you're saying that there was a demon and, oh, it was the spirit of a janitor. I'm thinking they might be cover stories.
Yeah. It's yeah. We've said so much of it repeating at this point. It's like something feels off about it.
Something feels fabricated.
Yes. It's one of the few times where there's something to it, but what the heck is it? So, I don't know. That's where I'm at.
And it'd be interesting to find, because everything I saw, like, it was 50-50, if there is either version on campus is told more than the other. Or if it's like 50-50 there too, where they're like, oh yeah, Gwendolyn fell from the catwalk. No. It's the janitor that haunts the costumes. No, but I love them. Alex, any final thoughts on Gwendolyn or the Lily Room? Or both?
In thinking in the same way that Sean has said before, it feels cover-up-y, so I don't want to belittle the lives of either of these individuals, but definitely it feels suspicious at best. Like all of this feels weird. This feels like Lincoln Park Golf Course weird. Like, not as ridiculous, but it feels
Weird, off.
Yeah, not like the things we typically read.
Mm-hmm.
Not the things we typically dive into. Like this, part of me wants to say that the skeptic in me wants to say that there is no ghost haunting, and I think both stories are in a way a cover up in a sort. Like the non spiritual one is the legend of what happened to these students, and the demonic seance one is the school cover up, is how I feel about it. That's just my thoughts. I don't know that either of these individuals would be haunting these places. I don't know. That's just my thought.
And to compound off of that, like, I think because it's a no longer affiliated but very secular school, it makes all of the spiritual stuff seem plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes it to a point where it's like, okay, if this was at Edinburgh and they're saying that there was a seance and an exorcism, it's like, this school doesn't even have a chapel. Like, I would be like, no, they're making that up, like we did with the Coven, where we're like, okay, this is most likely just a prank. But in this environment where it's so closed off, I almost find the spiritual ones more believable. I don't personally, and once again, not to talk down, I also don't believe that they're true. I believe that there is a good chance that these tragedies took place, and if anything, we're talking people that were, 18 at the youngest. We're talking potentially 18-year-olds that have not spent much of their life. Maybe this was their first time on their own. If she was a student that was part of productions, maybe that was where she was her happiest. Maybe that was her slice of happiness, so why wouldn't she stay there? Same with Lily. Like, yeah, well, we keep calling her Lily, but it's basically same with the other young girl. Maybe up until that point where she took her life, that she was happy there. Or she took her life and she's trapped there. Either way, they're just both living out their lives, is what I think it is.
I just want to, in your talking and bringing it up, the Lily Room ghost, my question is, why did the person kill themselves? I have a thought, and it's simply because of the history that the school has. We're talking, I could imagine an unwanted pregnancy.
It's possible.
Or a rape victim. Just simply based off of the era that it happens in, the history that the school has, and the fact that it's a young girl, a young woman.
Right.
And both of them have her crying in some way, shape, or form. Like, to me, that sounds like some girl who's just experienced a severe trauma and can't talk about it and can't accept it. I'm reminded of a similar story. It didn't end with a girl taking her life, but a former teacher of mine, psychology teacher, was telling us when she was in school going for psychology, she was an RA, and there was a girl who was sexually assaulted, and she had a mental breakdown, and what she ended up doing was locking herself in the bathroom in the girls' dorm, shaved off all hair on her body, head, everything, covered herself in baby powder, and was rocking back and forth in the corner. Like, when something traumatic like that happens, some people respond in very different ways, and it's hard to tell. So for me, that makes me think that for sure something tragic happened to her. Yeah, I think if we go with the Gwendolyn fell over, like, yeah, that one, it's a tragedy, but it's also completely an accident. It's not like someone pushed her, but that Lily Room one makes me really think that it was.
And keeping up with that same thought process and going on the spiritual side of it, anyone will tell you if you're in that state, you're more open to some kind of possession.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be demonic or just a spirit latching onto you. When you are that low, it's so easy for them just to attach to you and, influence you. So maybe she was just going to, be upset or, go shave her hair off. I know this is the 60s, so probably not. But maybe that was the push that took her over the edge.
No, definitely more there. And hearing both legends and knowing both of them for each one raises a lot more questions than we'll ever get answers for. Both are incredibly fascinating, scary stories. Both very different in tone, too. You get Gwendolyn that's just hanging around the areas that she loved because she was in the theater, and then the other one is, darker with the tragedy happening, and now that's where she's possibly trapped. So, two very different tones, each one then broken down into two very different tones from there. But I think that does it for Grove City College. Make sure to like and subscribe, share us around, and make sure to come back next time as we have another travel episode, as we're going to be talking about and checking out Mercyhurst University. So make sure to come back, and we'll be out there.
Thanks, guys.
Stay in the light.